the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behaviors so you won't click. No complicated code, just tried and true brain science at play. Social engineering for good, the best defense is in your mind today.
Hello and welcome to Phishing for Answers, where the carrot beats the stick and we flip the script on the bad guys, turning humans from easy targets into the strongest line of defense.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast belong solely to the hosts and guests and don't necessarily reflect those of their employers or sponsors. We're seasoned security professionals, but this is a conversation, not a custom consultation. Need specific guidance? Reach out to Joshua Crumbaugh directly.
Get ready. Phishing for Answers starts right now.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. This is season 2, and I'm really excited because today we have David Cross with us. He is the CISO of Atlassian, that company that owns all of the tools that we use every single day. Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into cybersecurity?
Well, I've been around for a few years, right? In Microsoft, Google, Oracle, now Atlassian. I'm also been angel investor, advisor. I'm also a venture partner with Rain Capital VC. But it all started, I think this book in the back here, right, is Bruce Schneier's Applied Cryptography, the original one. Where did I get that from? I got that from the Naval Exchange bookstore in Naples, Italy, when we're coming back from the Gulf War, right? And I read that book. I said, this is where I want to be. That set things off from my military service. Obviously worked in electronic warfare, but from there, I know where I want to go. It all started there 30 years ago.
Yeah, you were key in one hands-on engineering with some of Microsoft's early security, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of my patents and things like that is so everything from you go look up who wrote all these white papers about Microsoft certificate server enrollment or other things like that, or the encrypting file system. You might recognize somebody here.
That was you. All right. I've read a couple of those, normally out of frustration, but I have read a few of those. Well, it's great to have you on the show. I'm really excited to dig into some of your philosophies around just the human element in general and to cybersecurity. But one of the things that I found interesting that I've seen you say a few times is that we've got to make tools that developers want to use. Mm-hmm. And the reason that stood out to me is because I've been saying for a very long time that when cybersecurity is the easiest path, it becomes the default path. And so I really like that. And maybe that's a good place to start is how do we make cybersecurity easier for everyone involved?
Well, I always like to go back to something I learned and heard from a colleague and friend a long time ago, Ira Winkler, which many people have heard of, right? And Ira says it really is like security. Who's your customer, right? Every company, you can talk about your end customers, but no, who the customer of security is, it's the developer in your company, right? Security, we're a customer service organization to make our engineers, our developers, and other things work really well, especially because I've been in product security for a long time. But that's the number one, how we have to think about it. If we make their life great, they're going to love us. And that's the way to think about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so I have a question for you then around the human element. One thing that stood out to me more recently, and a little bit about my background, I spent much of my time as a ethical hacker And about, I don't know, 60-70% of that time doing application security for the federal government, amongst other organizations. But because of that, I've seen thousands of applications. And more recently, I've seen quite a few applications built predominantly by AI. And one thing that stood out to me was that the AI applications often were built a little bit more securely than the human applications, just because so many of our developers weren't taught about cybersecurity. This is something that they learned after they graduated from school. So how do you battle that? What do you do to help them write more secure code?
You know, this is what I can't resist, sharing kind of my thoughts on this. Certainly, for many years, we had the shifting left, from a culture perspective, from an ownership perspective, et cetera, DevSecOps, right? I think it had some good principles and things, but was it really successful? I don't think so. But now with AI, the world's changed. And I say we're shifting left to AI, right? What I mean by that is that now we have agents writing the code, right? But now we have agents that could be securing the code. And that's why we're shifting to AI. And so it's the best of both worlds. We couldn't ask for something better here.
I agree completely. I think AI is the solution here. It can review the code, and from the time I commit to the time I get back to my desk, I can have a review sitting in my inbox. It's amazing how quick it is.
And here at Atlassian, for example, that's what the way we think about it, saying, hey, great. AI saying, whether it's your IDE or the coding agent, we say, hey, just go ask these agents to make sure it's secure, it's compliant, it's private. So great. We set those up to do those things. And of course, the AI just uses it.
Yeah. I do think AI, for the first time, gives us the opportunity to stay ahead of the bad guys. So much of what we do revolves around patching and putting in compensating controls for, insecure code. I think now, with us being able to write code so quickly, secure it so quickly and so effectively, that it will help us stay ahead of the bad guys. I mean, what do you think there?
Well, I think it's going to help. It certainly is going to help enormously. If you think about, for many years, I won't mention a vendor, right? They say, oh, we can do remediation automatically. We can be, doing all these resolutions automatically for it. It never worked, did it? Right. But now with AI, it can actually fix the code, right? And submit the PRs for you that no one would ever want to touch pretty fast, right? We all have monolithic software sometimes, right? It's like, wow, John Doe, go look at this code someone wrote 20 years ago that you've never seen before and try to fix a bug. Well, AI is not afraid to do that. And it can do that, which never existed 20 years ago. And now it's a whole new world.
Well, and I think about all of like the Fortran and the Pascal, and we had these languages that were entirely developed by people who are at retirement age now. They are leaving the workforce, and we had no one to replace them. Well, all of a sudden, AI can jump in, it can read the code, it can write the code, it has no problem with it. And I think that's another really good thing, is that it does help us modernize. I've seen a number of clients already that had applications that were, built on old technology that everyone was afraid to touch. And in one of them, in one case, it was a project manager that was just like, I'm going to rebuild this. And they did. And it was so much better than what they had. When I asked, I was like, well, who did it? And I expected it to be someone technical. No, it was the project manager that had to manage all of that. So it's certainly an exciting world where I think for the first time, non-technical people have access to write code too.
Certainly, Joshua, you mentioned, ethical hacker. If I say, hey, red team, pen test, I use different words there. But before, it's kind of like you think about, oh, you found something, right? And you think, oh, here's vulnerability. But how much time did you have to find every variant, right? Or every path, right? So you found one, and then you move on, right? Well, now with AI, you say, we can find all the paths, right? All the variants and things in an automatic way and get the full answer, right? And then on top of that, here's the recommended fix and changes to correct that.
And you get the full fix, because I mean, there were so many times that we would say, hey, you have this issue, and they would go fix it. But they would fix the exact specific thing that we found and not the larger
Yeah.
overarching issue. And so we would go back and forth and back and forth. I mean, I think one time we must have gone back and forth close to 100 times on a single ticket. I know the company itself, the vendor, was just hated us, but it is what it is. You've got to get these things secured, and unfortunately, you're right, they don't take that long anymore. Pivoting a little bit, how do you, what, in your opinion, what is the best way to drive culture change from a cybersecurity perspective? How do we make people care about cybersecurity that, say they're in the accounting department, or, even janitorial?
The way I like to think about this, it's a little bit of the art of influence and other types of things, but ultimately is when you're data driven and people can understand the impact, from a data perspective, right? It's easier for them to embrace it. If you say, well, here's my opinion, or here's what I want you to do, right? People are naturally, as humans, we're going to reject it. But versus you can say, well, this could be the impact to a customer, or this could be the impact to us, or this is what it could cost us if we don't do this, right? And people are like, people then internalizing that and then accepting it, right? It's always not just about the what, it's about the why. When people understand the why, it's really much more easier to embrace and accept.
I couldn't agree more. And the why really connects back to motivation. And so we've already talked about ability. One of the things that I like to talk about all the time is what I call social engineering for good, but it really is just behavioral science. We've been studying it for millennia. And so there is a behavioral science framework for, framework for behavior change. It was developed out of Stanford University's behavioral science laboratory by a guy named B.J. Fogg. And it says, for whatever behavior we want to achieve, we need motivation plus ability plus prompting. And I bring that up because what you're hitting on there, starting with why, tell them how it connects to the customer, how it connects to their personal life, all of that ties into the motivation factor. You're building that motivation for the user to drive that culture.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, it's to go back to the art of influence, right? It's, the reciprocity, right? Is that, hey, if I give you something that you love, you're going to want to return it, right? This is the age-old thing is, why did the vacuum, salesperson bring the flowers and saying, hey, well, can I talk to you for 5 minutes, right? It's because we're human. And so if you think of it that way, hey, I'm making this better for you, engineer, I'm making this better for you, operations organization. They're like, oh, I want to return that, right? It's natural.
Yeah. Well, I love that you brought up reciprocity, because, there's all of these different cognitive biases that we all have. We use them every day to quickly make decisions. And but they're also used to exploit our people and social engineering attacks. One of the things that I focused on is how we can use those same tactics to make our people more secure. And you just hit on it. We use reciprocity. We give them something of value so that they give us something of value in return. And I love it. I think the same thing about authority. It's funny how we still see the CEO attack working, when it's as simple as sitting down with CEO, getting him to record a video, making sure that every new employee, the first thing that, well, at least within the first however many days, they see that video of the CEO saying, hey, I'm not going to ask you to buy gift cards. That exact same bias to authority works to make sure that no one falls for it instead of, everybody.
I can't resist bringing up, something that comes to mind I'm really passionate about in this area. We think about the various training, phishing training, and social engineering, things like that. Is I think the thing which I'm very excited about is how we've evolved quite a bit here now. It's not about giving the exact same training and exact same message to every person in the organization.
Yes.
Because the executives are different than the developers, than the knowledge workers, than the executive admins. It's how we train them based on their persona, what their workload like, because that is how it will mean the most, right? And I think we're seeing a lot of companies that are helping with this, and I think that's how we have to look at things going forward.
Well, I saw a statistic that said that when you contextualize the training to that individual's role, that it becomes 15 times more effective because it means something. All of a sudden, it's not this generic, oh, it's everyone's training. It's, oh, wow, this training is for IT. This training is for finance. And so it hits to them. I think the other point here is that the bad guys are targeting our people based on their roles. So if we are not training based on their role, we're starting out behind the whatever.
Absolutely.
I
The
forget
different
phrase.
roles. Oh yeah, I'm saying the different roles, the different personas, and the behaviors. Right, people have different risks, different roles,
They do.
and different threats. And then how you take that information. I think this is like one of the companies, like was it Living Security, helps doing that. Is here's the people based on how they're acting and their role. This is what they're going to need, and helping them with that. Right.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it's that role-based training that is so critical. But along the role-based training, something that I also think is neglected, and it's the flip side of the same coin, is role-based phishing. So our people get targeted every day based on their role. I think we have to target or do our phishing to the individual's roles. But I've also seen the phishing simulations get a really bad rep all the time because of the way they're done in a lot of places. So I want to just leave that one wide open. What is your opinion of phishing simulations? And if you do them, how do you do them effectively?
I think there was just a paper came out, and we saw on LinkedIn here recently of people talking about some research that, yep, it never works, right? I think that when you do it the same for everybody, you're never going to get the result you want. Nothing's going to change materially.
I agree completely. Sorry,
Like,
I'm just the choir here saying amen.
But so Joshua, I ask you, like, let's go back to ethical hacking and red team. Does a red team ever fail to get in? No. They always going to get in because that's their mission. So for phishing tests, can I get everybody to always fail? Of course I can, right? Because that's the nature of it. Versus focusing on where's the real problem, understand their persona, their role, right? And how they can be trained and detect these things themselves, right? And I think that's the different way. That's how we need to think about it.
Well, I agree. I think so often the goal of phishing assessments is to try and get people to click. My goal when I run phishing assessments is honestly to try and get people to report. I want to train people. I want to build those reflexes. I don't think the goal is as much, can we get people to click? Because the goal is education. The goal to me is building those, what I like to call human virus definitions. So, whenever people do a hands-on exercise, they get muscle memory. And to me, that's what we're trying to do with phishing simulations. But they have to be done in a way that the user instantly knows when they made a mistake and they learn from that mistake. When you lose that just-in-time education, I think too often the user feels exploited and they feel taken advantage of. And that's when you get that whole phishing doesn't work.
I can give you my opinion. I think one of the other challenges is we have phishing training and the tests that do one thing, and then our email security solutions do another, and they're not that connected, right? And so therefore,
no, they're not. They're always battling each other, aren't they?
Yes. And ultimately, I want the user to click. I want them to click the thing is like, investigate this for me, right? I don't want to click the other things. I want them to clicking that button. But they're so disconnected in how we approach this, right?
I agree completely. So let's talk KPIs. How do we measure culture within an organization? I'll leave that open to you. How do we measure culture?
Can you give me some more scoping for that one?
Well, anyway, I can give you an example of how one of my favorite metrics. One of my favorite metrics to just measure culture is the report rate. If I send a phishing simulation, how many actually come back to me? It's, one of a few, but it's hard to measure culture. And I think that's one of those ones that gives me a good idea of how security aware people are. But just anything, it could be coding, it could be number of bugs, it could be, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's two things. Certainly, I do love it when I see people reporting not just the phishing tests, and the thing, yes, oh, I caught you, but more the one like, I suspect something, right? And I'm
Oh, yeah.
double checking, right? And when you're seeing the ones, and even if they're the false positives, they are checking, they got the right mindset. That is one in itself.
It's a win.
The second one is whether a company, whether you're using Slack or other things, is really you have the space where I don't care what the question is about security, whether it's phishing or something suspicious, whatever, that people say, I know I can send it there and I'm going to get an answer. Someone's going to answer me right away and they're there for me, right? And when you get people feel comfortable with that, then you can say, well, so many problems and issues can bubble out that it never would have, versus if it's not easy. If it's not easy, people are just like, oh, they'll make a mistake. They're not going to tell anybody. They'll fail. No, we want people to say, I need help. And then they love it because they get great customer service.
Well, I think it's not only that it's easy, but that we create an environment where they know that they're never going to be penalized for reaching out to the cybersecurity team, to the IT team. And I say that because I guess I do focus a little bit on the phishing side of things. That is my business. I have 2 million users, right? But I bring that up because I do still see, well, not personally, but I do a lot of public speaking just like you. And one question I like to ask everybody else is, how many people in the audience still have a 3 strikes and you're out policy at work? And for the longest time, I've always had multiple hands in the audience. The best I've ever done was this most recent one. I was out in Phoenix a few weeks ago, and I only had one person raise their hand, and she said, well, it's not me, but my husband company still does this. And I think that when people are afraid of getting fired because of the way we run any program inside of our cybersecurity, we create this environment where they're afraid to talk to us.
Well, I can't resist. I'll go back to my military experience. I was in, naval aviation, right? In the aviation community, element is you make a mistake, there's no blame, never, right? We want people to say, I made a mistake, something's wrong. There's never blame. It's always done in a safe way. We need to do the same thing for security. If people are like, I think I made a mistake, right? It's just like PIRs or postmortems. It's like, it's always safety, do the right things, and we make it better, right? And that's the culture that we want.
Yeah. Well, and I think the more we can make cybersecurity easy, the better it is. Now, another thing you talk a lot about, I saw, was not being the department of no. And I know we've hit on that a little bit, but maybe you want to just elaborate a little bit.
Well, I think we can go back to the old days of, test and QA. It's like, nope, you're building this. I can't test that. I don't have the resources, right?
I've been that guy before.
Oh, yes. I can go back my days on Windows Server at Microsoft, right? But I think ultimately is we're there to help, is that and understand is what is your problem? We're there to help you fix it, right? And it's really, that's what it's all about. And when you understand the pain, this is where I love, being in the enterprise, right? When you understand the pain, then you know what to fix. And so it's also being firsthand, touching it yourself, being there, being embedded with it. And that's a big part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you run or protect the systems that, well, everyone in the world builds their systems on. That's a massive, massive responsibility. What's your approach to that? How do you sleep at night with all of that pressure and responsibility on your shoulders? What's your approach?
Well, certainly, I think I think 3 things is: one, you build a great team, right? You find people that are better than yourself, but also everyone is equal, right? You're part of the team. My mission is not to be a hierarchical leader. My mission is to help the team members who are the experts in their various areas. Yes, I can write code. Am I the best coder? No, I'm not, right? There are people in the team. What is blocking them? How can I help them, right? And that's a big part of it. But how do I sleep well at night is then when you have a great team that I go back to my military days. We're a squadron. We're all in. We're one family. We're there for everyone. And you have that confidence. You can turn your back. You can sleep well because you're there. And I think it's how you build an organization of cultures that we're all in together. Then you're always going to sleep well.
Well, I can sleep well because you sleep well, because my infrastructure is certainly on yours too. So just very curious. So another question that I like to ask, particularly CISOs like yourself, is what's your day look like? What do you spend most of your time on?
It's a really good question. I never want to say I'm like the Wall Street executives or something like that, but no, every morning I wake up early, I go exercise, and I read what's the news, what's going on, staying informed with things. And every day is different, right? I think one of the exciting things about security is every day is different. It's always dynamic. It's always going, right? I'm a big fan of listening to podcasts. I like running. I'm a big runner. And so do I want to listen to music when I'm running? No, I want to listen to podcasts, and that's where you connect with that. But the last thing I was going to say is that I've learned for many years, when I first left the military, I want to join Microsoft, and they're saying, nope, you need to build up your skills a little bit more before I'm ready. So I went back to graduate school and things like that. Every week, I invest time in learning and growing. And that's what it's all about. You set a dedicated amount of time every single week. You stick with it. You're always learning and growing. And that's how you make yourself happy.
I agree. In fact, when I'm not learning, I'm far less happy of a person. So I like that you said that's how you make yourself happy. Great advice. Okay, I think I know the answer to this one, but I do ask every single guest, if you only had one and you had to choose carrot or stick, what are you going to go with that's moving forward, and why?
If I only could have one, I didn't quite understand that one. Sorry.
Okay, so carrot or stick. Do you want to punish people to get them to be more security aware, or do you want to reward people to make them more security aware?
I love recognizing and rewarding when people do the right thing, right? And that's what it's all about, right? It's not about, we're not at war, right? And therefore we need to use the stick. It means we're there to celebrate and be successful and lead by example.
Yep. I actually only had one person that ever chose stick over carrot. You mentioned them earlier, but I'm not going to say any names. But no, I completely agree. I think that it goes back to the old adage that we've heard a million times: you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And I think that all the behavioral science says that we want to motivate people to do what we want them to do. So the final part or piece of the formula that, we haven't hit on yet, motivation and ability, I think we've hit on really well. But the final one is prompting. And it says basically that once we have a motivation, once we make cybersecurity the easiest option, we still have to prompt them on a regular basis to remind them about it, because it's not their job. They're not going to think about it on their own. What tricks and tips do you have to prompt your people to be, just to remind them about cybersecurity, that you're here, that you're there when you need them, to not do risky things, not to use an AI that's unsanctioned or whatever it happens to be?
There's no easy answer for this one, but I'll say in two things. One is, for many people know, it's not a public forum or things like that, but I write what's called the weekly security dossier. I've been doing it for almost 20 years, right? Everybody, the company knows David Cross, the weekly security dossier. And part of it is like, you're building a rhythm, you're building that music beat. And people say, David, what's going on? I said, did you read the dossier? Oh, what do I need to know? Did you read the dossier? Where do I go? It's only on the dossier.
Read the dossier.
But that said, though, it's part of it is you're stirring the stories. People don't know. Sometimes I say be data driven, but as humans, Who's the best presenter? Who's the best speaker? When do you remember it the most? Is you tell a story that then people can relate to, right? And when you share these and people are like, I want to know what the latest story is. Oh, thank you for sharing, right? In a safe way. I think sometimes that really helps people to stay connected and up to date and thinking about it.
Oh, I agree. We've got a new thing that we use all the time called Praise the Reporter. So whenever we get something, it's not all the time because people get desensitized, but when we see that whatever happens to be reported, that's actually a legit security concern where, it almost makes you go, whew, I'm glad they didn't fall for that. Thank God they reported this. I know we've all been there before, and we'll praise them. So we'll send an email to everybody saying, so-and-so reported this. We wanted to thank them for it. This was a real attack target organization. And then we use curiosity. We say, would you have noticed this if it hit your inbox? And we found that that's not only a great motivator because, people are very much motivated by ego, but it also helps to remind everybody that the threat is real because it's that social proof along with it. It's not David Cross telling them about cybersecurity. It's their peer.
Yeah, I think two things is also, recording when a person does something and people are like, why do we have all these security people? Like, well, this is what they did. Here's something great. But also sometimes the security technologies, right? People are like, why are we spending all this money? Why do we have these restrictions? And when you say, oh, guess what? We blocked this. We caught that. This was, they were trying to come in. And because we had this, that's what saved us, everybody.
Yeah. We were actually just putting together an intro for state, their entire security awareness program. And that's one of the things we did was we grabbed stats from all their different security controls. And we said, in the very intro last year, we were able to block this many of this many of this. And I agree. I think that helps build that momentum with your peers. Well, we are almost at time here. This has been a phenomenal one. I can tell that you're a brilliant CISO, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak with you, particularly because, like I said, we are a hefty user of Atlassian. So thank you so much. But before we do end, do you have any lasting tips or recommendations that you want to leave with the audience?
Well, certainly the one thing I'll say, I'll give you my professional tip and I'll also give you my personal tip, right? My professional tip is those that use Atlassian, Jira and Confluence is like, Rovo is your friend. It's amazing. When I came to the company from 2 years ago, is everything that I could do with Rovo, right? It's like, what's going on? Where did this occur? How do we fix this? How does this apply to FedRAMP? Everything's done in minutes, right? It's unbelievable how you can see
I only just checked it out the other day. I should have checked it out sooner. You're right. It is very powerful.
The second thing I always like to say, everybody, is from a personal perspective, is it's not about work-life balance, everybody. It's about work-life choice. Make the choices when you want to push, when you need to take a break, right? When you're making the choices, you're always going to feel great. And also, most of us have families, right? Say, hey, I want to go get my MBA, or I want to push for promotion. You make a choice and a decision as a family. And so then you're all in together, right? And then you can also benefit from it. But it's not the us versus them or things like, or just you. It's you make family choices. And this is how people end up the happiest.
I agree. In particular, I mean, I am a little bit of a workaholic, but I'm right there with you where if you do something that you enjoy, you make choices each day to do things that allow you to do stuff you enjoy, you really don't have to work. You just get up and do it again and have more fun. So at least in my opinion. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a fabulous episode, and I really appreciate you joining us. Everyone out there, have a great day, and we'll see you.